I've had a podcast for almost 3 years now. And the other day when I went into the room where I normally record my podcast, I thought, no, I'm ready to take this podcast seriously, which means I need a serious podcast setup. This room that is mostly a guest room with like a little podcast studio shoved in the corner needs a refresh, because this is my new podcast studio with the guest room shoved in the corner. And I finally had a vision of how I was going to make this into a legit podcast studio. The first step was to find the right paint color, which unfortunately Home Depot did not have. I had no other choice but to custom make my own perfectly dark plum color, which is definitely annoying, but I'm not gonna lie, mixing paint colors makes me feel unreasonably cool. I can't explain it. After mixing to my heart's desire, I had found it, the perfect deep plum that I was looking for, and we were off to the races. I did a question box on Instagram asking how long people thought it was going to take me to paint this wall, and we had answers ranging from 3 hours to 11 weeks, which if you've been following me for any length of time, I get it. The thing is rolling this wall really didn't take that long, but then I spent probably an hour looking for brushes to be able to do like the top and the sides. It ended up taking longer than I had hoped, but I did get it done within a couple days, which is probably a record around here. And after all the work of painting was done, I decided I hated it. I didn't exactly hate it, but I just didn't feel like it had enough richness for like the vibe of the podcast that I'm going for. So I decided we needed to do a heck of a lot more work. And that's when I recruited my dear husband, Steven, to help in this project, because I knew the vision that I had was far beyond my capabilities. Because now my vision that had evolved from the previous vision was a monochromatic slat wall, which meant we had to go to Home Depot and buy plywood and then rip it down into 2-inch strips. I think they were 2-inch. And then nail them all to the wall, then prime them, then paint them, and then my studio would be taking shape. Needless to say, Steven is a saint for getting this part of the project done, because let's be honest, I never would have been able to figure this out in the time crunch that I was currently in. Here's where we were at, literally 36 hours before my guests were coming to stay in this guest room, even though I'm in the middle of turning it into a podcast studio. Was this the best time to take on this project? Probably not. But you know what? That's just how I roll, okay? I got it primed. And then came the task of remixing the paint color to somewhat match the color that I had mixed before, because you could still see that color between the slats, even though it's really hard to tell from this video. Meanwhile, the rest of my house was a wreck, because, spoiler alert, I have 6 children, and what were they doing while I was completely absorbed by this project? Not entirely sure. But I can tell you, definitely not keeping the house clean. This is the state of the upstairs of my house the morning of the day that my guests are arriving. And I still have painting to do, and I need to get it done ASAP. I need to be able to air the room out so that they're not like inhaling paint fumes all night while sleeping in there. And that is when my friend Erin, bless her soul, came to my rescue, because she came to my house and our kids played while she cleaned the entire main floor of my house while I finished painting this room. Truly, everyone needs a friend like Erin. She is the freaking best. Come back for the reveal.